Good evening, everyone. I'm Jack Klieger, President and CEO of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust in New York City. It's my pleasure to welcome to this evening's special advanced screening of Ruth, a little girl's big journal. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's special advanced screening of Ruth, a little girl's big journey, a wonderful new film produced by Delirio Films and the USC Shoah Foundation, and not yet available to the public. As you'll see shortly, this short animated film follows Dr. Ruth's experience during the Holocaust and the choices she made along the way, choices that defined her entire life's journey. Tonight's advanced screening for a private museum audience has been made possible thanks to everyone at Delirio Films and the USC Shoah Foundation, including Stephen Smith and director A.L. Resch, and a unique partnership between 8 leading Holocaust museums across North America: the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, the Florida Holocaust Museum, the Holocaust Memorial Center in Detroit, Holocaust Museum Houston, the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, the Holocaust Museum Los Angeles, the Montreal Holocaust Museum, and the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust in New York City. Each of our museums produces and pursues the essential work of teaching the history and lessons of the Holocaust to the next generation in our own communities, whether in Dallas and Tampa Bay, Detroit, Houston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Montreal, or New York. We share the goal of building a more tolerant world by exposing what hate can do. Dr. Ruth K. Westheimer has spent her life as an advocate for this work, including as a member of our Board of Trustees in New York. So it's fitting that we have come together from around the country this evening to celebrate the upcoming release of a film about her life story. It's particularly meaningful that the film is designed for an audience of elementary school students and other young children, because if there's anything that Dr. Ruth's story makes clear, it's that the work of stopping hate must begin young. And I'm also very proud to announce some recently published news, and that is that Dr. Ruth K. Westheimer will receive the prestigious Golda Meir Humanitarian Award next spring from the women's organization in Israel named Namat, which has over 800,000 members around the world. Previous recipients have included Dr. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. On behalf of all of our museums, I welcome you to this evening's program. And I hope that in a time of rising anti-Semitism and hate, you will join us in the essential work that is inspired by Dr. Ruth's journey. It is now my pleasure to hand things over to Dr. Stephen Smith, who is a good friend and the CEO of the USC Shoah Foundation.
Jack, thank you so much, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special screening of Ruth, a little girl's big journey. We have a fabulous panel ahead for us this evening. It's going to be hosted by Susan King, film journalist and historian who you will read regularly in the Los Angeles Times. We're going to be joined by A.L. Resch, who is the director of the film, and producer Raphael Marmor. We also have with us Dr. Claudia Wiedemann, who is educational consultant at the USC Shoah Foundation, who's been thinking about what this film means in our educational establishments. And of course, I really want to thank our executive producers, Andy Gittow, and in particular, Jody Harris-Schwartz, who's been on this journey with Dr. Ruth and I since it was first conceived and made sure that this film was possible. Thank you, Jody. You know, as happens with Dr. Ruth, I got a phone call on the day in which her film Ask Dr. Ruth came out on Hulu. She wanted to remind me it was coming out and I must watch it the day in which it came out, which I did. That evening, as I sat and watched Ask Dr. Ruth, which was produced and directed by Raphael Mora and A.L., I saw in that film short animated pieces that reflected on her childhood. And in that moment, I thought, wow, what happens if that became a film in its own right? I would have called Dr. Ruth there and then, but it was midnight in New York. So I waited until the next morning and I said to her, how about those short pieces of animation become a film in their own right? Brilliant, she said, brilliant. But I can't make that decision. You have to speak to the equally brilliant Raphael Marmor. So I called Raphael Marmor. And the idea of the film, Ruth, A Little Girl's Big Journey, was born. To create a short animated film that young people, little people, could watch that were the age of Ruth when she took her big journey. This is, for me, is a story of testimony. It's an animated film, but it's Ruth telling her story in her own words to a younger generation. Just a moment, we're going to see the film. But of course, it wouldn't go without saying that there's a purpose behind this evening, as well as seeing the film. Next year, Dr. Ruth will be given an honorary doctorate from Ben Gurion University. And in celebration of that, there will be a new scholarship in psychology, a new Dr. Ruth Psychology Fund. I'm going to put up here a screen for you to look at. Take note of this, and in particular, the website on here. If you want to support the Dr. Ruth Fellowship Fund at Ben Gurion University, which you may do at any time during this webinar or afterwards, that will be going to a very good cause indeed. I'll show you that screen again at the end of our program. Of course, after we've seen the film, we will be joined by no less than Dr. Ruth K. Westheimer herself, without whom this was not possible, because she is indeed the most incredible, indefatigable, indomitable 92-year-old that I know. And I thank you, Dr. Ruth, for the opportunity for us all to help tell your story to the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ruth, a little girl's big story, big journey. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Stephanie Ksheminsky just said in the Q&A box, I needed that with a little heart sign. Thank you, Stephanie. So that's a little reminder that the Q&A box is open for your questions, and we will try to provide answers. The chat is going to be disabled. If you do put questions in the in the Q&A, we'll try and answer them to you directly. But some of the questions that you're asking already, I think Dr. Ruth and other panelists will answer. So we'll let the conversation unfold for a little while, but we're making a note and we'll try and answer as many as we go along. And to help us with that is Susan King. Thank you, Susan, for joining us today and for moderating our discussion. I'm going to hand this over to you now. Susan.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And thank you for all of our viewers zooming in from all across the country. I hope you enjoyed the movie, and I think we have a wonderful panel. Stephen, you've already met, and of course we have Dr. Ruth K. Westheimer. Let me read off. She's an educator, an author, TV personality, an actress. She is an orphan of the Holocaust. She was a sniper with the Haganah, fighting in 1948 for the creation of Israel. And as already mentioned, she is receiving the honorary doctorate from the Ben Gurion University and the Naamat's prestigious Golda Meir Award, Humanitarian Award. And Nahamat is the largest and leading women's movement in Israel. We also have the director of the film, Eyal Resh. We have the producer, Raphael Marmor. We have executive producer Andy Cattell from the Shoah Foundation, executive producer Jody Harris-Schwartz, and the editorial consultant from Shoah, Claudia Wiedemann, Dr. Claudia Wiedemann. So thank you all for coming. And Stephen, I just wanted to ask you first, you mentioned that Dr. Ruth had wanted you to Ask Dr. Ruth, and the day it dropped on Hulu, and then you decided, and then you called her the next day, that the animation sequences in the documentary would make a great animated short film. Are there a lot of films and other projects for youngsters about the Holocaust out there right now?
Well, it's great you're asking that, because in fact, many of the Holocaust museums, including some of those that are hosting today's event for us, have brought content to younger people. I remember the very special exhibit that was at the Holocaust Museum in Skokie, Illinois, which the Illinois Holocaust Museum Education Center there did for younger people. And I think what we're realizing is that the younger we start, the better it is. But obviously you need to do that in the right way. And there's no one better to talk to young people about their experiences than Dr. Ruth.
Well, also I was thinking, and Dr. Ruth, hopefully you'll agree that there's that wonderful song from South Pacific, "They've got to be carefully taught." And I thought that this movie is sort of, you know, that's, you got to be carefully taught to be racist and anti-Semitic. And this is sort of, you know, sort of the antidote to that. Here we get to talk to, we get to see your story, and you're teaching tolerance and hope, and I think it's, you know, it's very beneficial for kids today. Now, for years, have you been wanting to talk to children about the Holocaust too?
No, that's a very important question, Susan, because I did not talk very much to my children when they grew up. I did not want to burden them. However, since I used to be a kindergarten teacher, I somehow knew, Susan, that we do have to have some programs talking about that difficult time. And I am very pleased with the way that this kind of was the child, this film of the documentary called Ask Dr. Ruth. Ryan White, who was the producer on the documentary of Ask Dr. Ruth, when he told me that there will be some part in animation, Susan, I thought terrible. I thought they're going to make me look like Mickey Mouse, or they make me look like Pinocchio, and I was very happy. If you remember, and everybody who listens to you and me, watch this again, you will see, and you see it clearly in the documentary, the railroad station in Frankfurt am Main. When I said goodbye to my grandmother and mother and never saw them again. That wasn't reality. They weren't the only ones in that railroad station to say goodbye. There were all of the other parents of the other children, 300 of us, who went to Switzerland as part of 300 Kinderaktion to be permitted to go to Switzerland, supposedly for 6 months. Supposedly the parents should be able to pack up and move. What this animation permits is, when you look at it again, Susan, you see the loneliness on this railroad station.
Right.
Even the color pink is kind of signifying the loneliness, which in today's world we have to talk about a lot because of all of the things that we are all living through. So I was very grateful to Ryan that in the documentary they used the animation, so I wasn't worried anymore. Ayal did a super job. The animation in this film is just beautiful, genial. And it does show that a child, I did not talk about Auschwitz, I did not talk about the horrors. I did say that I never saw my family again. But it's so clear that in a film like this, we can teach history that we must teach, we have an obligation, and that children will not have a sleepless night. So it was done beautifully. Also, I have to tell you that Rafi Marmor has done a film, I'm giving him a plug. He has done a film that was called No Place on Earth. That's a film, No Place on Earth for Jews. And today, in today's world, we can build an entire curriculum about what happens to immigrants, what happens, how do we have to teach you and me and everybody about tolerance and about, so that things like this will never happen again.
I wanted to ask both Rafi and Ayal about the look of the film and how you worked to make it for a certain age. You know, you wanted, I mean, to me, I thought the 2D worked really well. I thought it wasn't super, you know what I mean? It was almost like a watercolor. It was almost like a storybook watching this unfold. I love the use of colors. And so Rafi and Aya, could you talk about, and I know you worked, the animation was done by, was it Neko
Productions. Yeah.
Neko Productions. How did that all come together?
I guess I'll just start with, with the film, Ask Dr. Ruth. There was definitely a discussion about how we would represent, some of the times that, some of the stories of Dr. Ruth that we didn't have footage of, and that obviously there was no film that we could do it, and we didn't want to use just pictures, and there was a big discussion about whether we would use animation, and then what would that animation look like. And very early on we went to Neko Productions and Eyal, who directed the animation in the film Ask Dr. Ruth, and together with Ryan White, the director of that film, we kind of came upon this concept of what you see now in this animation and what you see in the film. And it was something that we thought a lot about, and Eyal helped us develop. And I think, Eyal, you can talk a little bit about what was the what were the inspirations, because we kind of went really deep in thinking about how to approach that.
Right. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I think that to me, like I'm a live action filmmaker, so I'm approaching animation through the lens of live action, double meaning in this case.
Right.
And so I was looking to, I'm just fascinated with memory and like how it kind of is being engraved in our minds, and like I was really fascinated with like how would Ruth's memory look like. And they have to be multi-layered portrayals of what it meant for her to live through these extremely difficult moments, And so this the style was derived from German storybooks, but then very quickly I started researching post-impressionism. Paintings, actual paintings, right? Because memory is a painting in a way, right? And so we said, why don't we use the painting style, right? And I drew inspiration also from live action cinema, right? Because it's very, I was trying to make it very lively, even though it doesn't move that much,
Right.
It still has loaded with emotion, and that's how we landed on it. I even used tarot cards as
Tarot cards?
Yeah, as inspiration. Because you can see that they're very contained in their message,
Right.
A lot of depth in it. Yeah, so that's how we landed on this, and I'm very happy that this is the response from Ruth, first and foremost, because to bring to life her life is a huge honor for me.
And Dr. Ruth, did you write the narration, or was that written by Rafi? How did that work?
I think it was a little bit like a combination, since I have done so many books, as you know.
Right.
And also there's one book, Susan,
Roller Coaster Grandma.
Roller Coaster Grandma, and that shows a little bit about my life in Frankfurt.
Right.
And then also I use humor, because I show that I take two of my four grandchildren to a Jahrmarkt, which means like a fair, a country fair, and we get measured to be on the
right.
They can go on, and I'm too short.
Right.
So in the Jewish tradition, it says clearly, a lesson taught with humor is a lesson retained. And I do know as a professor that if you hear something with humor, not stupid jokes, but real humor, you will remember what the professor taught. So I was very happy when I saw in Ask Dr. Ruth. I was very pleased with the animation. And then I knew that Eyal is brilliant, and I wanted him to make money. So, yeah, I want you right afterwards to go home and prepare another film for me. So it's very important to teach that even so I was worried, I kept my mouth shut, which is not easy for me. I talk all day long. But I kept my mouth shut because I knew already from the documentary that how sensitive Ayal did this part so that no child should wake up at night with a nightmare. But they do have to start learning what it means to be an orphan, because we see children all around us, especially these days, that have terrible experiences. So very important that this film is coming out right now. It is very topical, and I'm very happy to talk about it from morning till night with you, Susan.
Oh, well, when we have our dinner and lunch, we can also talk about it then too. And and we have Andy here from the Shoah Foundation, who's an executive producer. And Andy, what were the themes of the movie that really inspired you to be involved and to be involved and to make sure that this film gets out there?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's, you know, it's clearly the story, Dr. Ruth, from your testimony and your story during that period of time. And it documents it beautifully and tells it in such a kind of emotional way that children can engage with, and the animation brings that to life. But I think the idea for all of us involved is that idea of themes that will resonate in the universality of the themes, right. Universal themes. So things like resilience and courage and hope. And Dr. Ruth, as you said, loneliness, fear, isolation, and even, you know, the part about education and the grit that it took and the perseverance about, you know, demanding that they're going to get educated no matter what. So these are themes for children, no matter who watches it, if they're not in similar situations, but they're going to find something within the themes, within the film that apply to them. And that universality, again, was very, very important against the backdrop of this, you know, kind of exceptional, very real, very heartfelt story.
I agree with that.
And Jody, what about you? What was it about the film that you wanted to be involved in as executive producer?
Well, my family has been involved with USC Shoah Foundation for many, many years. And I felt that it was important, you know, just because of my own children and what we're seeing right now in terms of anti-Semitism and racism and how bad things have been getting. And I have always felt that when you give the message to children at a young age and educate children at a young age, when they get older, they tend to be more empathetic and they tend to be more compassionate and accepting. And I think that that is a huge message with this film. But you know what, also, who doesn't want to work with Dr. Ruth?
Oh, I
when
know.
I got to meet her and learn about her and her story, I just knew that I needed to be a part of this.
I think we all want to have her adopt us as her children. And you know, I think Dr. Ruth is a force of nature. I mean, really. And I got Claudia. I have to ask you about just working on this film from an educational standpoint. You know, like coming up to make sure it was for a certain age group, that certain things came across in the film. And now I was hearing that the film is like for 8 to 12-year-olds, but do you think it could also be viewed by younger people too, younger children too?
Yes, absolutely. With the proper preparation, it could be absolutely a film for younger students. I think to just echo what Andy and Dr. Ruth and others have said is that the film invites young people to learn the lessons from this history in a way that is age appropriate, and with the content that we're going to provide at the Shoah Foundation to prepare students, this will be a tool for educators both in this area of anti-bias, tolerance, education, that, it'll be another tool. And I'd like to say, just from an educational perspective and at the Institute, we were looking to create a film as well that could show that we could teach this history in a way that's appropriate for young people. This is an area that could be tough, right? Because you're working with very young children.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be done with the lovely, artwork and, the work that Rafi and Eyal did, that we could do this. This is possible when it's done with care, evidence-based, research-based educational material.
And
It
actually,
was
Susan, if I
very-
could leap in, Susan, I'm just seeing a note here from a lady called Jennifer Garbovitz, and she's just saying, to the point about younger children, that her daughter just watched. She's 7 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and she said to Ruth, Dr. Ruth, she said that she's very sorry that you lost your parents. And her 10-year-old son wonders if you ever found out details about what happened to your parents, and to say thank you for sharing this film with the world. From a
Oh,
7-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Tell the 10-year-old, the older one, he can call me and I will tell him on the phone privately that I never saw them again. But this is a perfect example that children of different ages will take something different out of this film. And that is the genius of these filmmakers. It's okay, I'm not complaining that I didn't do my part. However, the genius of it was that this can really speak to children of different ages. They all will understand, because they all hear the news that parents do sometimes die, especially in today's world that all of us live in, and that the hope that you can still make something out of your life, that here at the age of 92 and a half, you can be proud of. So I'm very proud of the film. And I think that parents who will see it are going to feel that they have fulfilled an educational obligation to talk about a difficult subject. Now, I know a lot about difficult subject because of the other subject matter that I talk about, but not in this film.
Dr. Ruth, when, you said when you're in, and it's also in the Ask Dr. Ruth documentary, that you never really talked that much about what happened to you in the war to your son and daughter, your children. But when did you start talking to your grandchildren?
I think at the age that they would see a film like this,
mm-hmm.
the age when they would see a film like this would be ideal, maybe 7,
Mm-hmm.
to say, look, this film shows you that I was an orphan. I call myself an orphan of the Holocaust,
Okay.
because I was not in a camp. So I will explain why I said orphan of the Holocaust, because the parents, the grandparents, I was an only child, were taken away from me. And it's nice that this film combines it with this idea of journey, of a trip, so that everybody has their own trip that takes them someplace, and hopefully to good places, so that it has the hope for a better life. And especially in today's world, this film is absolutely appropriate to show you take a train, and hopefully soon you are going to have a better life, like going to school. So I can see as an educational, a pedagogical way, I see a wonderful future for this film. And I have to tell you, Susan, I'm sitting here, I have seen it, of course, I do my homework, but I enjoy it every single time. And then I think to myself, how many people can I educate with a film like this all over the world, and in the United States and Canada and all over. And I think that the Shoah Foundation, in this respect, the Los Angeles University, in this respect can be very helpful by making sure that we get a wide distribution. Who knows, maybe we'll get a prize. If we get a prize, I will share it with them.
Stephen, what are the, and Claudia too, what are, Claudia, you were talking about education-wise, like the materials that you'll have with this, with the short film. But Stephen and Claudia, what are the overall plans? I mean, virtual film festivals. Is it going to be just online at the show, through the Shoah Foundation? Will it be sent out to schools, other museums? How is this movie going to be getting around to audiences?
Yes, Susan, is the answer to that. We already have 8 museums that are with us today, and thank you to all the museums that have participated in bringing us together. The work you do in teaching about the Holocaust and the need in our country today to counter identity-based hatred is quite remarkable, and thank you for all that you do. So we'll continue to work with our museums, our museum partners, and Claudia will tell us a little bit more about how it will be made available through our education platform, because obviously, as Dr. Ruth was saying, that's so essential. But I'll just say one final thing on this as I pass it on. A lot of questions in the question box here that I'm seeing about anti-Semitism in the world today and about the intolerance we're seeing in our world today and how the film can be used. And I think at the highest level, what we would say about this is we want this to get the widest distribution because this is made for younger people. And we know how quickly 8-year-olds turn into 18-year-olds and how important that educational journey is. Built into this film are those values that we so need in our country today and in our world today. And so we want to get wide distribution. We're not hanging on to this. We want every young person to see that we can possibly get it to. And we have a couple of strategies that I think Claudia might tell us about.
Yeah, so we will make activities, online and offline activities available for students at Eyewitness, which is our educational website. You'll see the address on, the chat. But we'll have resources that are grounded in Dr. Ruth's testimony and other testimonies that tell us about this experience of the Kindertransport. We'll have materials that prepare students before they watch the film and after they watch the film. That's really important so that they understand the context of the film. We'll have resources for parents and caregivers so they know how to support their students, right, and their children. We'll have resources also that will help students watch and learn from your other book, Dr. Ruth, Roller Coaster Grandma. So it's a full package of resources that when students experience them all, will learn about what it meant to be on the Kindertransport and its impact.
Okay. Bravo, bravo. I support all of that and I work with it. But I have to tell you that for me, I'm not retiring. Brand new is Crocodile You Are Beautiful, which is on diversity. I tell little aunts to be happy to be an aunt. If they cooperate, they are going to build bridges.
Indeed.
So that's for little ones. So you already, by your function, you already will have Roller Coaster Grandma. You will have Crocodile You Are Beautiful. You are going to have, for the parents, the documentary, Ask Dr. Ruth. And I think that that whole combination, hopefully with all of your help, all of you professionals, is going to make a dent so we can say we did something to make this world a better world. In Hebrew, it's called Tikkun Olam, to repair the world. So I want all of you to come with me when I'm getting the honorary doctorate from Ben Gurion. Whoever gives me a little money, do you hear me, Steve? Who gives me a little money is going to have good sex for the rest of their lives. So give them the address for a scholarship in psychology at Ben Gurion University. And then I don't have to raise money for the other one. The other big event in my life is the Na'amat, because the organization has 800,000 women, America and Israel and Canada, and it has Druze, and it has Cherkessim, and I happen to have a film about Druze and about Cherkessim and a book with each one. So I plugged everything that I needed to plug today.
I wanted, Dr. Ruth, I have to tell you that when I was watching this film, I was just so amazed at how strong and resilient you were at such a young age. Did you surprise yourself? Did you surprise yourself that you could do this? Or was it because of your dad and, watching your dad, wave and smile, that you realized that you had to be brave?
Very important point. You're very smart, Susan, and it is a combination. I'm very fortunate that right now I belong to the endangered species. Since I am 92, I'm very careful. I go with my daughter and granddaughter and son-in-law and my son from Canada. So, and I'm very careful. I do not go downtown right now. So I know what I have to do, but I'm very happy. Even though I'm only 4'7", Susan, a meeting like this with all of you and the Shoah Foundation and Rafi and Ryan, whom we mentioned, and Eyal and everybody, that makes me actually feel even taller. I didn't grow, but it makes me feel taller.
No, I think kids, and even if they're, parents who are going to watch this with kids, I think it's going to really help kids with bravery and to know that resilience and you can get through the hard times. And we are going through the hardest of times. It just seems every day there's something else going on. And I think anybody, this is universal. I think that any child has to deal with loss and loneliness. And I think that this film really will help every child, and even maybe their parents with their sit around. They may feel like they need help, they need toughness, they need to be tough for their kids, and maybe they feel like they're letting them down. And
it will give them like something to hold on to by saying, let's look at that film together and then we'll discuss it. And that will let children be able to ask questions which otherwise they might not. So it gives them the courage and the impetus of saying, how did that little Carola, that was my name, until I got to then Palestine, where did she get that from? And then I will say I got it from my parents, and I got it from my grandmother who lived with us. Salma, she had nothing else to do but take care of me. And she was a very religious, not orthodox in the way that we think of today, but a very religious woman of saying trust in God. And she certainly had an important influence on me. So we can, from this, parents can tell their children about their own parents and grandparents.
I have to ask Eyal, what do you hope people take away from this film?
I love that question. Thank you. I hope this film, it's a very relevant piece today because of many reasons. Also because we're living in the midst of a pandemic, and the idea of resilience and the idea of choosing to look at things differently is very important. Also the idea of like the cyclicalness of our journeys, as Ruth had mentioned before. So I hope that they see themselves on Ruth's journey and find themselves on it. And I also hope that, you know, and the idea that the journeys are cyclical and they will continue on with their own hardships and amazing moments.
And I think this is for
I like that.
Go ahead, Dr. Ruth.
I like what he said, an amazing woman. I like it.
And for Rafi and Andy and Jody, how did working on this film and working with Dr. Ruth change your life or enlighten your life?
You want me to go? I'll go first.
Okay.
I think just after seeing the film and seeing what Dr. Ruth went through and her courage and her strength and all of that, that it was incredibly moving, but at the same time, that is a lesson that we can teach to everybody,
right?
To small kids. And that, that it was a great takeaway for me to give to my own children.
How old are your children, Jody?
My son's almost 11 and my daughter's 13, and my son saw the film from the very beginning. And it was a great, you know, test to see, did you understand this? What did you take away from this? And he got the message. And then when he got the message, I knew that other children would too.
Nice.
And what about you, Andy?
Tell him hello and thank you.
I will, Dr. Ruth.
What about you?
Yeah, I would say, you know, it is that sense of journey and choice and how we all within our own lives, because, you know, it's funny, you approach this at first kind of as a project and a film, but there's so many lessons into it in terms of being able to kind of be on the journey of the film and
Right.
to be able to work with you. But I think there's that sense that really looking within ourselves and understanding that we have a choice in the way that we react, in the way that we view things, in the way, no matter how challenging, no matter how difficult, and to be really aware of that in everyday life. So that was something that I just it continues in my daily life. 3 or 4 times a day, I think back to the process of the film and the lessons of the film, and about that sense of resilience and looking at your life and the many chapters of your life as a journey, and how we choose to respond and how we have that kind of power within us. So it was a huge lesson.
And Rafi, this is your second journey with Dr. Ruth. And so how is this, what has all this meant to you? Because I always find, even if I just do a story, I always learn something. I learn something about myself. And I've talked with filmmakers. I said, what did you learn making this movie? And you've made 2 now with Dr. Ruth. And so what have you learned?
Well, I think, you know, I mean, I've spent now, I think we met each other in 2016, early 2016.
Wow.
We've now been pretty closely intertwined for a little more than 4 years, talking, you know, a week does not go by. Oftentimes a day does not go by that we don't talk on the phone. And I think the biggest thing that, you know, inspired me about her and her story and spending time with her is the constant positivity, like always finding the positive side of everything. From sitting at a restaurant and appreciating the ambiance to the, you know, the meal, the food, everything she's in, like everything she approaches in such a positive way. And, you know, I think that that's obviously something that's helped her throughout her life. And deal with all the incredible challenges, and to, you know, come out to, you know, the person that she is now, as accomplished, like, you know, few people in history have ever been as accomplished.
And Stephen, what about you? I mean, you've known Dr. Ruth for a long time. What are you hoping people will take from this movie?
Well, actually not that long. It's a couple of years, but it feels like a lifetime. It's been wonderful. And thank you, Dr. Ruth, for all that you've taught me and shared with me. I enjoy our conversations immensely. And thank you for giving the time and the thought and the energy and the heart to make sure that your story reaches the hearts of young people. you know, you've lived with this pain for all of your life, and you have done a great job of overcoming that and being the nation's teacher and guide to our own, you know, struggles. But all the time you were struggling, and you've been able to show just how you can overcome that and lead a life like you have led. And I think that's the greatest example of all. And that, Susan, is what I take away from my time with Dr. Ruth so far, but we're just getting going.
Oh, I would imagine.
Okay.
And especially when the pandemic's over, she can go and start talking to all of these kids in schools.
Indeed, indeed.
I think
Dr.
that
Ruth,
would be great.
I'm seeing, Susan, a few questions here that are really interesting. One of them is
Okay.
that people are asking where they can see Dr. Ruth's story. And in fact, in addition to Ask Dr. Ruth, which they can see on Hulu,
Right.
there's also the visual
Roller Coaster Grandma, which
Roller
is on
Coaster Grandma.
Amazon, which I have a copy and read over the weekend, which is a graphic novel or a graphic short book, which is it goes into more detail. It goes into more detail, a lot more like what's before her birth, after, and also how she was able to learn so much you were able to learn so much at the orphanage, how you got to study, which, you know, you see a little bit of it, you know, with the, I think one of your boyfriends delivering math to you and via the string. But yes, Dr. Ruth is, it's on Amazon. And Dr. Ruth, I mean, I was trying to think, I don't know if any of your shows are out on DVD, but definitely her story is out on Roller Coaster Grandma, which you could sit with, you know, parents could sit with their kids, or kids could read on their own.
Right.
It's
and it's again like with a film, that it will permit the conversation to be directed into something. So it's not so much that a child will feel put on display by being asked questions. They can talk about those things in a third person. Look what happened to that little Dr. Ruth today, Dr. Ruth, when she was a child and grew up without parents and was not permitted to get a high school diploma. So there are many issues in that little film that all of you now saw that parents or educators can take out to say, look, they didn't let girls go to the high school. The girl had to learn to be a housemaid. So it has different connotations of saying, of being positive about today's world, despite the fact that we have so many problems. But to say, let's take the good things, and then let's take that influence that my father said, knowledge, nobody can take away from you, that grandmother, which I tell, had nothing else to do but take care of me. So each child can really take out of there a tiny little lesson of life for themselves.
And Dr. Ruth, we need to be wrapping up, but I wanted to ask you, you know, we mentioned the Ben Gurion's, Dr. Ruth Scholarship at the Ben Gurion University. What had you been wanting to, I know you're getting the doctorate there, honorary doctorate next year, but had you wanted to do a scholarship there for a long time? Was this?
No, but I do have a scholarship going at Columbia University, at the New School.
Wow.
At many other places. However, this one came as a surprise when they told me that David Ben-Gurion, whom I never met, but who was short, Susan, I wish I had met him, that I'm getting an honorary doctorate from the university.
Right.
I said, I will waltz in, not walk in. I will waltz in with enough money for an endowed scholarship in psychology, not in sexology, not in sex therapy. That is my expertise, but that's a different story. In psychology, because it is broader. So I will waltz in, and I get this money from people because I stupidly, how can I promise good sex? It's nonsense. However, it works. I say anybody who sends a little money, Stephen Smith, tell them how to get the money to the scholarship so that I can waltz in with a scholarship in psychology. I'm now also on the board of Ben Gurion University, and I was just on Zoom with them today. So what a day. The Shoah Foundation, the Los Angeles University, my good friends Rafi, and where's Ayal, and Stephen, and Susan. Let me tell you something, people. Susan interviewed me 31 years ago.
34.
34?
Yes.
I did a film with Gérard Depardieu and Sigourney Weaver. The film never made it. The film was called Une femme ou deux in French, One Woman or Two. The film was One Woman or Two. The film was awful, but I had a love affair in the film with somebody from the Comédie Française. I never told you that.
No.
That's for you today.
Wow. Well, congrats. And he must have been a funny guy. No, the Comédie Française.
I went 4 times back and forth.
Oh my God. Well,
that was Gérard Depardieu's Good Times, and he was wonderful, very smart.
Well, I think, Stephen, should we wrap it up now?
Well, first of all, Susan, I want to thank you for moderating this wonderful
panel. Has been wonderful. This has
been
wonderful.
For being with us today. I want to remind everybody that you can see Dr. Ruth's full testimony on the Visual History Archive. Many of you asked questions about details of her story. She gave a wonderful 3-hour interview 25 years ago. So go to the Visual History Archive this evening and watch that after you've watched Ask Dr. Ruth and you've also read Roller Coaster Grandma. I also want to thank Dr. Ruth. I've got some great news. Andrea and Barry Caton of the Caton Children's Museum in Los Angeles are going to help us with our education program to make sure that it gets around the country. They've just pledged to help that, and I want to thank them for doing that because it'll mean that the Shoah Foundation and all the museums that are on today will be able to get your resources and make them available around this whole nation. So thank you, Caton family, for that. So wonderful. And so I want to remind everybody at the end of this that our panelists have been sharing this because they want you to share this story. We're going to make it available and we'll let you know where to find it and when it's available. Thank you, Rafi Marmor and A.L. Rush and for Neko Productions for all that you did on the animation, to Andy and Jody for being our executive producers, and for Claudia for making sure that this reaches our educational community, and of course to all the Holocaust museums around the world. And once again, to the incredible, indefatigable, indomitable Dr. Ruth Westheimer. You're going to see the screen. Go and sign up to make sure we're supporting her scholarship. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you.